Welcome once again to Barca Lounge, and perhaps for the very last time, done and done, for the Barroom Brothers Offensive. We've been doing this for about 10 years, and thanks to Barca Lounge, and first, Phil Petroselli was one of the earlier producers. When this show began, it was Mortimur K, Eric Greenwald, and Dave Johnston, and then we added, to our great benefit, Christian Storm. I'm Doug Doofer, and my privilege here to introduce this event has been I can do as little or as much as I want. And fortunately, done and done, I just happen to have on hand something about that topic. In the end, there was no end. Whether or not they lived happily ever after is not easily decided. Does not everything depend on our interpretation of the silence around us? And the women have got to hold their tongues, especially with the new generation, the one just getting out of high school. A real family, he said, could feel his heart beating against the pine needle forest floor of the forest. I'm so glad to be at home again. Everybody seems to be pleased with the way I've taken command. It is a far, far better thing that I do than I ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I ever known. And I feel my thanks accordingly. Grinning at her, he sat down beside the bedroll and began to take his boots off. A little droopingly, but with a hopeful heart. She buried her own in his breast, and his heart was going like mad. And I said, "Yes, I will, yes!" She thought, laying down her brush on which to paint the dreams of his manhood in extreme fatigue. I've had my vision. And then I did what I had never done in his presence, much less in his arms. I cried, "Come, Lord Jesus, I'm coming, pieces of eight, my Lolita." He answered her and turned away from the view as she floated heavenward from the house of 7 Gables. And her lips came apart and smiled mysteriously, and wondered how any one could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth. And everything was as wonderful, 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 wonderful as it had been. It belonged to her now and to history. Maybe I could grow me a bale to the acre, like Paul was always talking about doing. And it'll be such a crop as never. Of such is the kingdom of heaven. Isn't it pretty to think so? I don't believe that, he answered, his eyes upon the distant soaring ranges. If you surrender to the air, you could ride it. It was the end of the line. He wanted to say it wasn't but couldn't, and lifted his hands to his face and wept many bitter tears. The knife came down, missing him by inches, and he took off. And so before the knife comes down, missing him by inches, and Eric Greenwald takes off, we will be having this thing right now. I have been instructed by Dan, our stalwart bartender for so many of these, in honor of Eric and in honor of physics, because beers are not pouring well, order booze. Now, we've had this same kind of order through the years, and so we proceed again. Our first reader of the evening of Done and Done will be Mortimer K.
Hello. Before I start, I just want to say that these last 7, 8, 9, 10 years of doing the Bar and Rise Offensive with you bastards has been quite lovely. If you've never found yourself in a cheap strip motel off the Tulsa Expressway with the blinds nailed to the windowsill, you've most probably made far better life choices than myself. Which is not to say my life isn't fulfilling in its own way. In fact, my life is plausibly far more interesting, albeit with the addendum of a shorter life expectancy. Excuse me. Oh yeah, and then there's the guy in the bathroom. His name is Corbin Blish, and he's hired me to kill him. Seems like a fairly straightforward job, but there's just one catch. He can't die. While this does present a set of altogether different problems, finding solutions to unusual botheration is what I do, specifically of the occult variety. When can I come out? Just cool it for a while longer, Corbin, until I know the coast is clear. Okay. Yeah, this guy can't die. Seems like some kind of neat superhero power, right? Not so much. It's way more complicated than just the ability to survive death. One trouble is when Corbin dies, he becomes temporarily erased from history. The past is constantly resetting small fragments of itself to compensate, and not always right away. But this is bad enough as it is, but there's also the added dilemma. During the several minutes between physical death and regeneration, he becomes a singularity conduit, a kind of trans-dimensional doorway to anywhere depending on what key you have. Now, this kind of information could be useful to, say, a cult whose goal is to bring about the end of the world. Not my kind of thing, but whatever rubs your rhubarb, right? Well, this is exactly what the Thalku have in mind. They became aware of Corbin and his gift after his ex-wife and active Thalku cult member, Deborah Kincaid, decided to prematurely cash in on his life insurance policy. Oh, and in case I forgot to mention, every time Corbin comes back, he doesn't remember me, or his ex-wife, or her merry band of batshit crazies for several hours, which, as you can well imagine, makes for some interesting dinner conversation. And that, oddly enough, is how we found ourselves in our current predicament. Let's rewind a few hours. Could we hurry this up a bit, Corbin, I asked. Don't rush me. He was looking over the late-night breakfast menu. I mean, I don't know if I like pancakes or waffles. Do I like my eggs sunny side up or scrambled? Hash browns or roasted red potatoes? He looked up. Oh God, I hope I'm not one of those people who put ketchup on their eggs. He tossed the menu on the table. I hate this. I picked up my coffee and took a long-needed sip. You're lucky I like you, Corbin, or this would be famously boring by now. Oh, I'm famous now? You have no idea. Fuck it. He waved over the waitress. Could I just have the number 3 special with sunny eggs and rye toast? Oh, and could I have a glass of milk, please? You got it, hon. The waitress popped her gum and swindled her way back towards the kitchen. There it is, I said. There what is? Asked Corbin. Your order. It's the same thing you order every time. Well, if you knew what I was going to order, why didn't you make any suggestions? It's not what you hired me for, Corbin. Plus, you're a real sourpuss when you wake up from your little naps. You don't take suggestion well. Really? Really. Corbin looked a bit sheepish. Sorry, I guess. Look, you've died 8 times already this week with no success to ending your condition. I took the last cold sip of my coffee. It stands to reason that might make a person a little cranky. Although the last attempt where you tried jumping off that roof doesn't really count. You know that won't work. All you accomplished was to put me in the very awkward position of having to scoop up your dead ass before the police arrived. I know, and I'm sorry. Sometimes I get a little crazy. I just want this to be over, you know? You've been a trooper, and all things considered, I appreciate your help. As long as the checks keep clearing. You are kind of a dick, Corbin smiled. Private, I said. Just don't expect me to dance. The waitress returned, and after setting down Corbin's number 3 special and a glass of milk, asked if there would be anything else. No, I started before changing my mind. I'd love a refill of my coffee. Sure thing, hon. She popped her gum again before walking away. All right, I've got another route we can try, I said, noticing Corbin wasn't listening. His attention was focused on a new customer at the host stand. He watched the man with a steady gaze as the waitress sat him at the booth just behind us. Corbin took a quick look over his shoulder before turning back to his plate. He forked up a large mouthful of hash browns and began to chew without really looking at anything. Corbin, I said. Corbin, hey, I waved a hand in front of his face. He shook his head and blinked. I'm sorry, what? Someone you know? Who? The rather tough-looking fellow in the expensive coat you couldn't take your eyes off, I said in a low whisper. The one sitting right behind you? Oh, yes. Corbin. What? Swallow your food, man. That shit's disgusting. Oh, sorry. Corbin picked up his napkin and finished chewing. I was just thinking. Sorry to interrupt. The waitress leaned over our table to refill my coffee. That all for now, she asked. Yes, thanks, I smiled. Anytime. Her eyes lingered a bit longer than I thought was just professional courtesy before turning and walking away. I watched her for a moment longer before asking Corbin, what about? What? What were you thinking about? Corbin opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He blinked. I forgot. He looked back over his shoulder at the man in the booth. The man looked up from taking a drink of his coffee. Can I help you? Corbin continued to stare at the man. You need help keeping your eyes to yourself, mister? The man had set down his coffee. Corbin turned around. His face had that look of someone trying to figure out that last little bit of a puzzle, only to realize there were pieces missing. Are we going to have a situation here, Corbin? My left hand slid under my coat and rested on the handle of the Walther P-88 resting loosely in its holster. Corbin's brow furrowed as he turned again to look at the man. The man leaned forward with both hands on the table and hissed, Motherfucker, if you look over your shoulder at me again, my dick better be in your ass. Corbin spun quickly back around. Okay. Okay, what? I asked, keeping an eye on the other man who was now in the process of sliding out of his seat. I remember. Remember what? I asked as I watched the man stand and put a hand under his expensive coat. That man, whispered Corbin. His name is Sobris Brown. He's an associate of my wife, Deborah. Corbin? What? I'm pretty sure he can hear you. How's that? He's standing 2 feet away over your right shoulder, Corbin, and you haven't exactly been a wallflower. Oh. Yeah, oh. My right hand tightened around the coffee cup as I whispered to Corbin through a forced smile, teeth clenched. Corbin? Duck. Without waiting to see if Corbin had heard, I launched my freshly refilled cup straight at Sobray Brown's head. Fortunately for me, or unfortunately for Mr. Brown, depending on your point of view, I had years ago cast a hex which augmented my reflexes well beyond the human spectrum. However, as I watched Mr. Brown dodge the cup from my right hand, I had the sneaking suspicion he might have had a similar thought. I filed this away as a bullet from the gun in my left hand caught him just above the bridge of his nose, snapping his head back before his body swung ungracefully to the cracked linoleum floor. Just because you're keen doesn't mean you're perceptive. Holy fuck, said Corbin. What the hell just happened? You tell me, Corbin, who is this man? He had a few tricks up his sleeve which would have been handy to know about. I told you, his name is Sobris Brown. He worked for my wife. Corbin, I sighed, she's your ex-wife and she tried to kill you. Which I realize in the grand scheme of things, such as they are, is neither here nor there. But if you expect me to keep you safe from these people until I find a way to kill you, you need to tell me everything. Okay, but Corbin trailed off. What? I turned and saw the cause of Corbin's confusion. Our waitress stood motionless in mid-stride. A fully formed bubble of gum hung from her pursed lips. The silence of the place became loud in my ears. Oh, that, I said. It's a feint. I held up my right hand and pointed to a tattoo across the bottom of my palm. It temporarily stops time, for lack of a more appropriate explanation. But, said Corbin, you and I are still moving. He turned to look at the body on the floor, and he wasn't affected either. I stood. Well, it's my spell, so of course I'm not affected. I looked at the late Soberus Brown, and he probably had a ward against it, judging from the fact he also had the agility hex. And you, well, you won't be affected by any magics because you have my blood on you. What? Check your left jacket pocket. Corbin reached into his coat pocket and removed a small glass marble. What's this? He held it up, squinted at it, shook it. Is that your blood in there? You're a quick study, Corbin. Have I had this on me the whole time? Mostly. Mostly? Mostly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to cut Mr. Brown's heart out. You, what? I'm sorry, Corbin, but I have a life outside this job you hired me for, and I need supplies to work magics and make serviceable little doodads like that thing in your hand there. I mean, where do you think this shit comes from? Walmart? Well, no, but it's just a little shocking. It's like, whoa! Corbin turned away, looked again, and closed his eyes, pointing. That is a lot of blood. Yes, things like this usually do get a bit messy, I said as I cut open Brown's chest to afford access to the pulmonary cavity. In 3 precise cuts, it was done. I stood up, putting the organ away inside the special lining of my coat. Taking out a handkerchief, I wiped my hands clean of Sober's blood. We should probably get back to the motel before the feint wears off. People are going to ask questions, and we don't really have the luxury of answering them. We're just going to leave him here? What do you propose, Corbin? Should we take him out for drinks? Maybe catch a late show? No, Corbin glared at me. That's not what I mean. I mean, are we just going to leave him lying there like that on the floor? It's undignified. Undignified? This guy probably had plans to use your eye sockets for sexual gratification, Corbin. Come on. I turned and waved a hand towards the door. Let's go, cowboy. I could hear Corbin start to follow me as I walked out into the spotty darkness of the parking lot. I sniffed the air and nodded to myself. Yes, I breathed. Come on, you fuckers. What was that? Asked Corbin. Nothing. Get in the car. The 5 minutes back to the motel were ridden in silence as Corbin glowered out the passenger side window. I could almost hear his expression of disapproval. Pulling the car into our assigned slot, I slid the gear shift up into park and killed the engine. All right, Corbin. What? He sat silently, continuing to look out the window. This whole trip is going to get real awkward if you won't talk to me. Corbin closed his eyes and took a deep breath. I've just never seen anybody do something like that before. Well, when, not if, your ex-wife and her cronies show up, you're probably going to see a lot worse, so suck it up, Buttercup. You hired me to do a job, and I always see it through the end. It's a point of personal pride, Corbin, and I'm not about to change that because a little blood makes you feel all squishy. A little blood, Corbin started when a shadow of movement flitted past my peripheral vision. Corbin, I said, my voice flat and steady. No, he yelled. You listen to me, you... The hard look in my eyes caused his mouth to slap shut. Get out of the car and walk slowly towards the door. He nodded. Go. Now. Opening the glove compartment, I grabbed a warding bone and getting out of the car, held it above my head, moving quickly backwards towards Corbin and our room door. Corbin? What? Was the whispered response behind me. Open the door. I can't. You have the key. Shit. Okay, it's in my pocket. No, my other pocket. My other pocket. My other pocket, Corbin, for fuck's sake, hurry it up. Sorry. I heard the key turn the lock, and taking one last look across the parking lot, lunged through the door, slamming it shut through the deadbolt. Corbin, get my bag off the bed. Inside, you'll find a hammer and a small red bag with nails in it. Take them and nail the door shut. Nail the windows closed, pull down the shades, and nail those down too. Why do I? Because right now I'm the only thing keeping your friends outside, and I can't keep it up forever. Those nails are protection wards, so do us both a favor and move your ass. Corbin got to work, and within a few minutes we were secure. For the moment. I tossed the warding bone onto the bed and sat down. Rubbing my face, I tried very hard to ignore the distinct feeling of a time shift. And when I looked up, I saw Corbin watching something through the small sliver between the window shade and the wall. Yes, she's out there, if that's what you're looking for. I know, said Corbin. Got a feeling too? No, he pointed. I can see her. She's right there on the other side of the lot. What? I jumped up and moved to Corbin's side. Move over. He was right, and she wasn't alone. Something was squirming in the darkness behind Deborah Kincaid. What is it? Asked Corbin, his voice sweaty. I smiled. That, my dear friend, is a Malfortomus sapius, and a magnificent specimen it is. Are you insane? Possibly, but that isn't on the table for discussion right now. I turned back to the room. I was simply making the observation that that creature out there is a unique life form of the only seen once in a lifetime variety. Life is full of these moments, Corbin. The trouble is most people are too busy looking at the unattainable instead of what's in front of them. It's quite sad, really. I could tell by the look on his face he wasn't impressed by my unsolicited insight. I sighed. Look, you want me to kill you right and proper dead. I understand and took the job knowing it would test the limits of my knowledge and abilities. I also understand that there are moments when you won't understand my methods or opinions, but you have to trust me, Corbin. I pointed toward the door. Now, your ex-wife and her overgrown lapdog are out there across the parking lot, and that may as well be a million miles away because right now the rest of her mystical goon squad is on the other side of that door and are about to get in. The wars I have in place aren't going to hold against the kind of energy I can feel out there. So I propose we get the drop on them by doing the one thing they least expect and open the door. It'll even the playing field. Corbin sat heavily on the bed and was quiet for several moments. Then slapped his knees and looked up. Okay, let's do this. That's the spirit. I picked up the warding bone and handed it to Corbin. Now don't let go of my bone until I give the word. He gave me a look. Oh, don't be such a prude. It's called a joke. I walked to the door. Now be quiet while I work. I drew 4 Baldar symbols in the air, invoking the ability of dynamism. The nails in the doorframe pulled free and dropped with muffled pops on the motel carpet. I turned back to Corbin and put a finger to my lips. He nodded. Turning, I put my hand on the handle and took a deep breath before opening the door. My first bullets caught the 2 Thaku on the outside, just outside the doorway, completely unawares. The cadence of the ward-breaking magics became muffled beneath the fresh blood in their mouths. In the space it took to count the 4 others, I shot a third and cast snatched breath at 2 more. As they fell, clutching their throats, the last Thaku, fast bastard he was too, tackled me through the doorway and back into the room. My head struck the dresser, and for a moment everything was blurry. I had a single clear thought that perhaps this was the moment I had finally made a fatal mistake as I watched the Thaku raise a knife above his head before his expression went blank. His eyes rolled up, showing only white as he fell to the side, unconscious. Behind him stood Corbin, the warding bone held clenched in his white-knuckled hands. Before I can congratulate him on really stepping up, a voice floated across the entryway of the room. Corbin, my love, I finally found you. Deborah Kincaid stood just past the threshold, her pale green dress clinging to her ample form. Corbin, she said, her voice like honey. Come back to us, Corbin. Come back to me. Holding out her arm, she curled an insinuatingly long, nailed finger. Corbin's face became slack, and his hand limply dropped the warding bone to the carpet with a soft thump. He took a step toward her beckoning finger, then another. Everyone, including myself, was shaken from the spell as the distinct sound of an alarm went off. Sorry, I said, reaching into my pocket for my phone. That's me. I turned up the ringing tone and got to my feet, brushing myself off. Okay then, it's time. I shot Deborah Kincaid straight through the heart before she could another word from her snarling crimson hole. What? Started Corbin. Sit down, I said, my voice deep and flat. Corbin sat. I made my way to the door and looked out. The Malformatalu was crouched not 10 feet away from the car. It growled at me through a mess of teeth and spittle. Fuck off, I said in the same deep, toneless voice. It shrank back as it gave a pitiful whine. I could smell the stink of urine as it soiled itself before galloping into the darkness. Right then, I said, rubbing my hands together and walking back inside. What are you doing? Asked Corbin. Why can't I move? Because I told you to sit. Don't make me tell you to shut up, too. I've waited a long time for this, Corbin. I sat down and slapped him on the knee. And what a pain in the ass it was to find you, it was. I laughed. And all the listening to your stupid stories and having to suffer through your senior moments. Except when we were in that hotel in Wichita, and TV Land was running that night court marathon. That one, that was genuine. I stood up. What enough dilly-dally, time's literally a-wasting. Once I found you, Corbin, I knew you were the real deal. I'd take it out of this reality. Corbin's eyes grew wide. If you knew this all along, why did you wait until now? Why bother with the whole charade? Oh, it wasn't, Corbin. I truthfully needed to keep you away from those amateur hour charlatans. I wasn't going to lose my ticket to those Verucas. It's all about timing. The door to my world wouldn't be available until... I looked at my watch. Right about now. I picked up the Thalkuv's knife. I really need to get back to my world. I've got unfinished business, and you know I hate unfinished business. And don't worry, I always finish a job. I'm going to pull your essence into the void with me, disconnecting it from your corporeal form, and that should break the link. It won't hurt, Corbin. It'll be... fuck it, I don't care. Just die already. I slit Corbin from groin to chin. His eyes became glassy as he fell back under the bed, his insides spilling out. As he gave his final breaths, I could see it. The naked reaches in the void, and beyond it, home. Like I said earlier, some of the life choices I've made haven't been the most well thought out. But sometimes you get a chance to go back and set things right. And that is just what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mortimer K. And our next reader, Christian Storm.
Dude, I'm glad I remembered these. I just started reading them. Otherwise, somebody else would have to read this shit. That'd be fun. That'd be fun. Okay, so first of all, wait, I don't need these when I'm looking at you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I have one businessy meeting, like little agenda item to take care of, and then I'm gonna read you a poem. So first of all, I know how busy everyone is, and I appreciate you all being here. I really think that it's important in this time of Twitter-asters and Twitter-like-ocracy that we stand together in solidarity to keep fighting fucking fuckheads, fucking it up for the rest of us. Fuck yeah. And I'm really hoping, yes, right, that's the solidarity unit, and I'm hoping that we could take a moment to hear from all of our compatriots who have been working with their particular groups to see how we can join forces and be stronger together. So what I was thinking is that I'd like to go over the notes from each group's decision process, and then we can see what makes sense in terms of how to move forward together. Sound good? Yes. Awesome. So I'm going to start with Mortimer K., your report back. Thank you so much for sharing your review of what happened and how the decision got made. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The two groups sat in rusty metal folding chairs across from one another. The air heavy with cigarette smoke, sweat, and makeup grease. The mimes perched on the edge of their chairs in tense mime silence. White faces set to serious, black mouths and eyes, all business. They were taking their time with this decision. The clowns, for their part, were taking this seriously as well. They slouched together, enormous shoes overlapping as long legs stretched out between metal chairs. The clowns contemplated and murmured amongst one another quietly, save for the occasional cracking of clown knuckles or squeak from a plastic nose or noisemaker. Cigar and cigarette smoke settling between them as they glanced at one another, murmuring quietly. For a moment, it seemed as if there might be a division between the white-faced circus clowns and the character clowns, but the tension receded like a sludgy rivulet full of baby doll parts and Jameson bottles. The mime side remained, not surprisingly, silent as they considered their options. Finally, the clown murmuring ebbed and settled like asbestos dust. Everyone waited. A mime in the back stood, all eyes turned to her. She paused, took a deep breath, white gloves expanding and contracting to her sides as if she was playing an air accordion. We have decided it makes sense for us to work together. We agree to the Clown Mime Solidarity Unit for fighting fucking fuckheads, fucking it up for the rest of us. Fuck yeah, we're in it! I know, I was happy. There was an uneasy pause as the clowns and mimes stared at one another. Then the clowns erupted into cheers, hoots, backslapping, and rowdy stomping of enormous shoes on the concrete floor. It has been decided, a character clown in the back shouted, the CMSU FFFF is gonna kick some serious ass. Well, that is good news. I want to thank Mortimer K for that update, and hold on any questions from everybody and get right to Dave Johnson's report, if that feels all right. Great, Dave, okay. I appreciate everybody doing this. Hold on. It got a little hairy. The time machinists had divided among themselves into yayist and nayist factions. A yayist, a lanky man with a guns don't kill people, people driving with cell phones do, bright green baseball hat stood. Why don't we just use the fucking time machine? Yeah, a short baldy man in the front stood up as well. We could bring Hitler back and divert his focus and energy and commitment to our cause instead. A redirection of resources, someone shouted. Historical appropriation, in a good way, someone else screamed. Sharp and bass-toned mutterings rippled through the crowd. Concerns, contemplations, caustic remarks, and coughs bubbled to the surface, riding the waves of muttering like shivering, cold, embittered surfers in malfunctioning wetsuits. We can't know what other effects that will have. You can't just use the time machine for whatever you want. It's history. History isn't supposed to be messed with. A woman in wraparound sunglasses and a red Clash Know Your Rights 1982 U.S. tour yelled. Purist, someone spat. I say do it. A tall woman in skinny black jeans and purple high tops blurted out, sabotage World War II, make Hitler our puppet and get this shit done. What's to lose? Maniac, the Clash shirt woman hissed. The crowd, divided, began to separate itself, flowing like oil and water into diverging rivulets, all the while spitting, literally and metaphorically, at one another as if volume and spit, rather than rationality, would offer a resolution. It did not. The volume, tension, and spittle escalated until finally someone did it. They threw the first punch. Metaphoric oil and water and not at all metaphoric blood splattered everywhere as people thrashed about, punching, kicking, headbutting one another until exhausted, bloody, and entirely out of collective breath, they lay in an undecided heap of human stubbornness. They lay there panting until the lady in the wraparound sunglasses, which surprisingly were still attached to her face, said, "Fuck it." Not sure what they meant. Everyone remained silent, save the panting. Sunglasses woman continued. I mean, we don't have to decide whether to use the time machine in order to join the coalition. I say let's join the ranks, and then when the time comes, put the time machine decision to a vote. Not a brawl, but a vote. The pile of panting, undecided legs, hands, torsos, bloody faces, and metaphoric oil and water shrugged a collective tangle of bruised shoulders. Eh? And with that, the time machine naists and the time machine yayist joined forces and entered the coalition. In other words, we're ready to fucking get 'em, the lanky guy in the bright green baseball hat declared. Awesome. Well, thanks, Dave. You know, I really appreciate that because I know that trying to run a meeting with time machinists of all stripes can be a bit like trying to herd cats in a windstorm, and I really appreciate your efforts with this. Doug, I'd like to read your summary now, and I appreciate your commitment to brevity while remaining quite detailed. Thank you. It's true. There once was a group of anarchists whose meetings were sometimes masochist, but they're dedicated to fight fucking fuckheads all night and to smashing every single white nationalist. In other words, the black, green, glitter, red, rainbow, and silver-studded Starlight block is in. Woo! Thanks, Doug. It's so great. So great. And now I'd like to share the even more brief, yet focused, on-point update from Eric Greenwald, your faction. Fuck you. Fuck them. Fuck it. Great. That is so great. God, and as Eric so articulately pointed out, we really need the F principles. The 5 foundational Fs of our coalition, as it were: fighting fucking fuckheads, fucking it up for the rest of us, fuck you. I mean, the coalition for fighting fucking fuckheads, fucking it up for the rest of us, fuck you, is ready to rumble. We have the Clown Mime Solidarity Unit, and the Time Machinists are in, and Doug, we get your energy and enthusiasm as well as glitter, and you know, we all know how much glitter bombs fucking rule. And Eric, well, you really understand the roots and direction of the fighting fucking fuckheads, fucking it up for the rest of us, fuck you coalition, and I'm sure your Chicago counterparts will be active and kick some serious ass. Thank you. So I know you're all really busy, and what I'm thinking now is that I propose that now that we know who's committed to our coalition to fighting fucking fuckheads, fucking it up the rest of us, fuck you, I propose that we wrap up for now and reconvene to decide our next action steps at our next meeting. For now, thank you. Meeting adjourned. We're done and done. Okay, now there's the problem. I am sick of disaster capitalism carnivores masticating, master blasting capital gains tax, raining fire on bombed out crumbling towers of concrete rubble, symphonizing non-trans identified armed combatants and heavy metal shock and awe sensory overload strategies. Overflowing and flooded crumbling infrastructures intentionally imagined to integrate particular images of perfection, percolating precious prejudices, and unimaginably untimely demises of disposable human beings. Death by firewater, and I do not mean moonshine, but water you can actually light on fire. I'm sick of neuron-numbing, tweetified, emoji short blasts like shotgun pellets fired from the swollen fingers of a wannabe hotshot sporting brown hand, tailored Italian suits with a mouth like a non-stop cannon, spraying senseless nonsense, scrambling safety into a dystopian vision of whitey white new money nerds, blue-suited Aryan zombies, and military aficionados who have never faced down a pissed-off, pistol-packing badass, but still feel entitled to stand tall, their massage-tingling spines soothed after golf rounds and hate tweets. I'm sick of science fiction heroes being white dudes with some occasional gal pals and POC folks to make everyone feel like, okay, we're all in this together, right? Well, because despite the old school Benetton ads and the new school multiracial reality shows and musical sitcoms, we are not at this time in any same vehicle, let alone intergalactic pan-generational multi-species spaceship heading towards a unified collective vision of solidarity. We're not in the same boat, bathtub, burnt out shelter, bombed hospital, burned ward, or even imaginary visions of what might be possible. Me? I want my dystopian visions blasting with a kickin' soundtrack by some new DJ that I've never heard of because, well, I'm old. And I want those visions projected onto any corporate towering tower with a solid side and blacked out windows. I want to hand Octavia Butler the mic so she can do a mic check while super border ninjas and stereotype and seriously, historically, and ethnically misinformed sombreros with barbed wire edges and laser tassels kick some serious 1% ass. And since Octavia Butler is no longer with us here on planet Earth, I want a parade of Octavia's brood battle-ready with some serious science fiction crisis management skills to facilitate raucous rebellions of pan-generational badassery singing Las Cafeteras if I was president, because goddammit, they will be president someday. I want truth, I want reconciliation, I want them together, like peanut butter and jelly, like peanut butter and chocolate. I want a fucking Reese's peanut butter reparations federal budget line item spearheaded by a fiscal strategic multi-state sponsored research project. I want an anti-fascist evidence-based treatment protocol to address the mental health issues related to surviving manifest destiny, expansion, and extractive capitalism and white supremacy. And goddamn, I want whiskey to be listed as one of the treatments of choice. in. It's therapy. I'm sick of the very notions of reparations sparking a retaliatory online reaction, unleashing a monstrosity of white privilege, carelessly packaged in an anonymous cyber astroturfy, whiskey, for white fragility. See, I'm having this existential crisis curated by caustic visions of nefarious souls. I mean, I used to believe people were born good, or at least innocent enough. But now, having lived through the messy reality of intergenerational trauma, hypervigilance, and endorphin-fueled reactions to symbols, let alone the real actions and agenda items of white supremacy, I'm kind of beginning to wonder about this thing, intergenerational privilege, like grandiose entitlement passed down through well-advantaged umbilical cords, roped with nutrients, endowments, specialized amino acid probiotic blended drinks that cost more than intercontinental flight, inherited property, an assured sense of self, and accumulated wealth. I am sick of bathroom bullies orchestrating laboratory Gestapo teams demanding documentation. Really? You need someone to provide a birth certificate so you feel safe to pee? Do you? I know. I'm sick of hearing how we can just shop our way out of this mess. Elite local economy squads patrolling neighborhood lemonade stands while small-scale slow food fashionista foodies and ironic Louis Vuitton loafers that cost more than a standard irrigation system upgrade suck down creative craft cocktails curated for a total immersion experience of feel-good provincial adventure travel exploitation, while their investment capital counterpoints buy up acreage from bankrupt farmers stewing in Monsanto soil swamps and self-identified self-starter shame, who then pivot in desperation to immigrant bashing. I'm sick of mothers being shot in their homes in front of their children. High-rise rooftop groupie sharks looking around lounge parties and post-production iCloud cocktail hours, outsourcing data points of their lives to people who become new data sets on an Instagram graph of human geographies and rebranding reformations. Okay. Do y'all think I'm branding myself effectively? Serious. Barroom rat bros booming on about curated dating experiences, investment apps, and how there really do need to be more types of beer. I am sick of sanctuary being defined by the boundaries of a church or a city. I want imagination directed towards a loving vision of what could be without being called charming, quirky, or delusional. It's not impossible to imagine a world without fake manure swamps being sprayed on poverty-stricken neighborhoods. It's not delusional to be able to picture alternatives to sucking up every last ounce of any kind of renewable resource and then claiming we can just fix a broken poison planet with science. Capitalism is not inevitable. It is not charming or provincial to envision ecological equilibrium, recalculating our collective nervous system in the sweet exhale of wild coyotes and having access to water you can actually drink. It's not delusional to imagine new kinds of economies not based on perpetual accumulation, but on collective commons and intersectionality. And this relatively new kind of predator drift market speculation, stalking a collective sense of curiosity and capacity while lauding never-ending expansion, space colonization, and shifting capital asset-driven ass-hattery, and 24/7 live-action role-play landscapes has got to be smashed. In a massive appeal to just end this. Stop the madness, call a truce, stop digging, stop pumping, stop extracting, stop dumping, stop expanding, stop draining, stop crushing, and for fuck's sake, stop trying to fix this with science and technology. If I hear another screen days, red-eyed, Red Bull-filled rant about space colonization or solar vector cloud shields from someone who has never gone hungry or had to bathe their children in poisoned water, I will scream you to death. I am sick of having a shoulder-twitching, post-traumatic stress reaction to the words tweet and president. I'm sick of list poems. I'm sick of people who take themselves too seriously. I know shit is serious. It's really fucking serious. Seriously. And I'm sick of taking myself too seriously. I'm so fucking serious. And I'm so fucking sick of being so fucking serious. It makes me sick sometimes. Seriously. I'm done. Thank you. I need all my meeting notes.
Thank you, Christian Storm. And now I really seriously suggest you all go right to the bar and medicate. Get yourselves some whiskey. Are there drinks that aren't necessarily a beer, because that's going to fizz up and be a problem. But please go there, and then we can all be cured soon and come back pretty soon for more of the reading. Barroom writers episode done and done. I don't know if I mentioned this before or even had to. The principle for this is that we follow a writing prompt or constraint or just direction that we all write something, or the writers, not necessarily the MC, has to write something following that thing. And so since Eric Greenwald, who is about to read now, is leaving town.
Wait, I get to leave now?
Well, depending how well he reads, maybe he gets to leave. Now, it could be that he doesn't get to leave. It's a visa kind of thing. So, please, welcome, Eric Greenwald.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and comrades, brothers and sisters. First, I was going to tell you about how I don't know what order to do this in, and then I just discovered I broke my glasses. So, gonna be a little off kilter. Oh, fucking filthy too. I think the best way I can do this in order of import is A, clean my broken glasses, 2, quickly thank you all for coming here. I will get back to that second point. But first, okay, I'll get back to this point in a second. Oh, dear fuck. Really? First, I want to read a poem that I think I'm going to be writing for a long, long time. This is sort of as I decided everything is become an exercise. This is an exercise. This is the beginning of a poem that I'm going to read to you, and I'm going to be writing it for several years. I call it Fake It Till You Make It. Oh, fuck. Slancha. To all of you, again, this is a point I'm going to get back to you. Cheers. Fake it till you make it. I've heard tell that you can dig yourself out of any hole. That the strength of standing up after every previous knockdown shows the way to do it again. Stronger, better. Absolute resilience. Face to the flames, feet to the ceiling. But, as they say, you get the fuck back up. And this, all of this, is the only truth there is. And the only constant is you, me. We will always be knocked down again. And again. And again. People aren't kind in general. We need too much, either real or imagined. We need too much. We can't seem to wrap our collective minds around things like love or kindness or the dignity of others. Sometimes, rarely, of ourselves. Because it's fucking hard work. It is hard work. It's not for the faint of heart or the faint of mind. It takes work and it takes focus. Most don't have it. Most can't. Most won't. And that's okay. But those who do shine, like the beautiful fall sky, like stars that others can't understand, so they find patterns to put you in. Constellations, movements, instead of seeing that one brilliant star, that star alone in dignity and beauty. Maybe that star is you. Maybe on a good day, it's me. I have gotten up off the ground a time or two before, and I'll keep writing that. Again, and I can't say enough, thank you all for being here. And there's a whole bunch of you that have been here a long time, fucking 10 years. Whew. Started out as an experiment, an exercise, ostensibly a bad idea. Set ourselves up for failure so we can fail more. To paraphrase Beckett, fail more, fail better, fail again. Housekeeping is in order. Doug took me to Portland for my first reading ever. Drove down, he asked me to do it. When I, for some reason, was very against ever reading in public because that's not my artwork, man. I put ink on page. I don't read. Well, Doug took me down, and I dug it a lot. And my constant gratitude for him to just showing me something, and for whatever fucking reason you decided to say, hey, Eric, let's go do this reading. He had to have been drunk. Jason, Mortimur K, spent hundreds of hours on a kitchen line together. We know each other in a way that I don't know any of you. And writing with him, doing this with him, and then having this complete removal of life was fucking stressful, a whole lot of no fun, and proud. Christiane, we've known each other for a long time, and I can't help but think of the time we went to a road bar outside of Bellingham to see No Means No. that in
Road trip!
yeah, indeed. Weird when we were kids, when we first met, and at that point we were fucking throwing our writing at each other, and a whole lot of bad chemical decisions, and it was just a shit you do when you're kids, when you're also kind of doing the same creative thing, trying to finding it. Beautiful. And then, Dave, this is the part where I get misty-eyed. Because Dave is the man I love, my best friend, my family. Decades of bad ideas come to fruition. Creative ideas come to fruition. I can safely say I'm alive, if not physically, certainly emotionally, because of that man. I love him to the bottom of a soul I don't believe in. Laying around on our kitchen floor in how many houses, coming up with ideas that are horrible. Oh, drunk, really fucking drunk. Horrible ideas. That because Dave was there, we followed through with. And this is one of those ideas. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank you all for being here. I rarely say things as effusive as this. Fucking beautiful. All right, now, next story. This is not a new story. As me and Dave sat at a bar one day, we had a discussion, and I think one of us anonymously said, I have no responsibility to these people. And maybe one of us anonymously said, they've never given us money. Oh, by the way, I have books to sell. Hit me up after this is all over. $10 for my first book. Thank you, Phil. So I'm going to reread a story because it's good. And in my defense, the last time I read this story, I read it really fast and I laughed my ass off during all of it. So, let me take my broken glasses on this hot summer evening. Let me read you a Christmas story. And when I say let me, I'm not asking for permission. Oh, fuck. Yeah. Again, cheers. We're all going to need this while I read this story, trust me. Thank you all so much. You're all very appreciated. I'm going to read this slow and I'm not going to laugh. Fuck, Dan. See, and Dan was so amenable when me and Dave, half drunk, came to him with this fucking Little Rascal sort of idea. Hey, I got a friend in the barn, let's put on a show. And Dan, thank you. Swan to the Dan. All right. I might get instantly drunk after all that whiskey I just drank in front of you. Wouldn't be the first time you assholes saw that. Let's do this. Slow, no laughing, articulate. Oh, fuck. My Christmas story, I read this, I think the theme was it the Office Christmas Party Gone Bad? Or was it just the Office Christmas Party? Fuck you, Doug. You're the legitimate writer. You're supposed to take notes. Fucking A. Really? There's been no safety net this whole time? Fuck you. All right. This is called It's a Wonderful Bunker. I just don't think it's a very good idea. Why not? Give me one good reason why not. Well, American troops did just take France away from us, and they've crossed the border into the fatherland. There's that whole thing. Hitler looked up at Himmler as he finished tying the stuffed reindeer antlers onto the large German shepherd's head. Then, there's that whole Eastern Front. Heinrich, I think you're being a real downer. Look at Blondie here. She's excited. She's full of Christmas spirit. Aren't you, good girl? Aren't you? Hitler rubbed the large dog, maybe a little too hard, on that one spot on the bridge of her nose, right between her eyes. That one spot that he always said, all dogs love this. Shut up, Dave. Who's your favorite Führer? Who is it, Blondie? It's me, that's who. Oh, good puppy. Blondie's downcast head mimicked that of Himmler's, except Himmler wasn't wearing stuffed reindeer antlers that were festooned with little brass bells, and Blondie wasn't nervously fidgeting with a large iron cross necklace. She wasn't wearing glasses either, or a uniform, but other than those details, they were having the exact same experience. My Führer, I just think that Hitler cut him off. God, broken glasses. Hitler cut him off. Being the supreme head of the, albeit failing, Nazi war machine, well, Hitler just had a way of cutting people off. Look, Heinrich, we are having a Christmas party. Look, Heinrich, we are having a Christmas party. I am going to throw the best Christmas party any of you have ever seen. And the fact being that I am, the fucking Führer, I would suggest that you get your thumb out of your ass, get your SS guards into those elf outfits that Ava so graciously sewed for you, get your little Debbie Downer panties out of that fucking wad, and act like a proud German that is filled with motherfucking Christmas spirit. Now. Okay. Obviously, if watching any episodes of Hogan's Heroes has taught me anything, the last word that Hitler said was probably "Schnell." Just imagine that all the dialogue in this story is in German. It's going to save me a lot of explaining. All right. Oh, drinks. God, fucking broken glasses. Really? Okay, let's do this. Dignified. Where were we? I want to recap. No, dear God, no. If I believed in a hell, I would go to hell for writing this story. Let's keep going, shall we? Blondie's head drooped lower as she tried to shake off the stuffed antlers with brass bells. Himmler's head drooped lower as he walked out of the room and mumbled under his breath, "Now I know why Rommel ate that cyanide." I heard that, Heinrich. Not very fucking Christmassy. Blondie slinked her way underneath a huge granite table to pout, in that way that dogs pout while suffering the indignities of the world. Yes, this happens even to Nazi dogs. That is assuming that Blondie had strong feelings about racial purity. On the other hand, her being a dog might preclude those ideas. Suffice to say, she was pouting. And so was Hitler. He sunk into his favorite comfy chair, sipped at his eggnog. He even tried to whistle White Christmas. Thank you, trademark. But his heart just wasn't in it. Not even his red, white, and green snowflake sweater vest was as comfortable as it used to be. "This has always been my favorite time of year," he mumbled to himself, feeling the holiday cheer draining from his rosy cheeks. "All I want to do is throw the best Christmas party ever. What's wrong with that? This bunker just seems so lifeless." Hitler looked at all the stockings hanging above the fireplace. There was one for Ava and one for Martin. There was Bruno's and there was Theodore's. Of course Heinrich's was there. I should give him a lump of coal, Hitler thought to himself. And Trudy's and Herman's. Herman! Hitler jumped to his feet with excitement. Herman is the jolliest of them all. Hitler squealed as he ran off through the bunker's hallways. "Herman! Herman!" The Fuhrer's voice echoed off the stone walls as he ran towards Goering's room. "Herman, we have a party to plan. It's going to be the best party ever." Poor Herman Goering. Sat bad Herman, slouched over his desk, nodding out in a morphine stupor. His makeshift Santa beard soaked with opiate-induced vomit, and his furry, oversized red and white costume laying on the floor next to him. Hitler became enraged. "God damn it, Goering! You couldn't even put on the damn Santa costume? Ava slaved over that just for you!" Goering made small gurgling noises as his forehead hit the desk. Hitler erupted. "Am I the only one in this fucking Christmas spirit in this goddamn motherfucking butler?" Ah! Hitler stormed out of the room, ferocious, filled with rage and hatred. How could they let him down like this? These were his most trusted officers, his inner circle. How dare they? He had never felt so let down, so marginalized, so disappointed, and so vulnerable. Well, there was that one time. But they were wrong too. It was a great painting. And what did they know about art anyways? He seethed. His blood boiled. He'd never been so angry. Well, there was that one time. But who are they to say, really, you should just drop this whole painting thing? Maybe join the army. Yeah, fuck them. And fuck that fat junking Goring. And Himmler, too. They could all just suck it. Excuse me. I'll get back to Hitler in a second. I've got to drink more. My broken glasses. Get ready for this. It's fucking Christmas, assholes! He marched down the hall, screaming obscenities at the walls as the bombs fell, exploding hundreds of feet above the concrete ceiling. And fuck you, too! He shook his fist in the air. You know, that way Hitler shakes his fist in the air. That's what he was doing. He charged into his office, anger giving way to despondency. Despondency giving way to... Okay. Fuck. That's your fault, not mine.
It's a different theme.
He charged into his office, anger giving way to despondency, despondency giving way to sadness. He flopped down into his comfy chair and sobbed. Fine. They don't want a Christmas party? They just don't fucking get one. I don't care. They're all a bunch of dumbasses. Hitler crawled into a little ball in his comfy chair and cried. I wish I was never born at all. I wish I was dead. Hitler ripped off his snowflake sweater vest and threw it across the room. I wish I was dead. Just dead, dead, dead. He wept and he wept for what seemed like forever when he suddenly felt something, a presence in the room with him. Hitler wiped the tears. Fuck me. Fuck me. Okay, I'm owning this sentence I wrote. Hitler wiped the tears from his eyes and looked up to see a white-haired man standing above him, smiling down. Come now, Adolf. Let's not have any of that talk. Who are you? Hitler snippled. That line has never been written. Ever, ever. Just want to point that out. Thanks. My name's Clarence. I'm your guardian angel. Wait. Just 1 minute here. Clarence kneeled next to Hitler. Adolf, why do you wish you were never born? Look, who are you? I told you, Adolf. I'm your guardian angel. Yeah, you told me that, but what else are you? Clarence stood up, catching Hitler's glaze. Really, the word was gaze. Clarence stood up, catching Hitler's gaze. Adolf, don't you think the world would be a much different place if you got your wish? Just wait a minute here. What wish? Your wish that you were never born. It's Christmas, Clarence. I can't stop myself from going into a Jimmy Stewart accent in this part. It's Christmas, Clarence. I just wanted to throw a party for everyone. I wanted to spread holiday cheer, the spirit of the season, the joy of giving. And no one cares, Clarence. I just don't want to live in a world like that. And what if you had never been born, Adolf? What kind of a world would that be? If you got a drink, drink it now, because the next sentence I read. Sláinte. Oh, goodness gracious. Now where was I? And what if you had never been born, Adolf Hitler? What kind of world would that be? You see, each man's life touches so many other lives. And when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he? Keep going, think about that. Hitler thought deeply, ruminating over Clarence's words. Yeah, well, if it hadn't been for me, everyone would be a lot better off. No one would even have to worry about a Christmas party. No one would care. Look, why don't you just go off and hunt someone else? You really think killing yourself would make everyone else happy? You really wish that you had never been born at all, Adolf? Hitler sunk deep into his chair, contemplating the angel's query. Let me just ask you one question, Clarence. Well, of course, Adolf Hitler. Anything. Are you Jewish? See you guys later. Real quick, I would love to again extend warmth and love and thank you, so many people that are always here that hear me read fucked up shit. I just really want to say a couple things. Up the punks. Up Antifa. Fight fascism every day, always day, as Brother Malcolm said, by any means necessary. Thank you.
Eric Greenwald. And next, and finally, we have Dave Johnston.
Good.
Sure.
They were expecting something different. They had prepared for the big finish. On September 3rd, 1881, a small crowd had gathered at the edge of Seattle with their bells and whistles, their dogs and ponies, their pomp as well as their circumstance, and sparklers soaked with rain that would never light. There was even a band, if that is the correct term for a French hornist and a woman playing banjo. I guess you could call it a proto-folk duo, but I won't, because I don't say things like that. And then, the icy tendrils of a particularly cold wind ran through the crowd. "That's foreboding," said one man to another man. And coming in right behind that ill wind was the big finish. On cue, the musicians started into My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. People started applauding politely. Dogs barked, and children blew whistles. The one exception was Natalie Skoogum's child, who saw the Big Finish coming and ran. Later, people would pay her money to tell their fortunes because they believed her to be clairvoyant. Her typical line of, "You will soon be disappointed," seemed to fit all occasions. What Natalie Skoogums was running from was a sight of a massive man wearing black boots, black pants, an enormous fur coat, and a small, square fur hat. The man stood there and regarded the crowd, and the crowd regarded him back. Him with his immensity, hair as white as candy floss, dark circles under dark eyes, and a jaw that was set like a pedestal stink. Then, as they watched, a sneer came across the man's face that went all the way around his head and came back on the other side. Turning to his right, he punched the French horn into the French hornist's face. Then, picking the fallen instrument up off the fallen musician, he heaved it into the crowd where it hit a child. It wasn't a glancing blow either. That French horn hit her directly in the face, and that poor child went down like a fall leaf with an anvil tied to it. By the way, the child who was hit in the face was Helen Skoogums, Natalie's sister. Because of that, she had a scar for the rest of her life, and nobody ever asked her about the future. Having hit a minor with a musical instrument, the Big Finish just stood there with a look of outrage on his face. Not just rage, outrage, because this was a man who had surpassed the typical limits of rage. Perhaps unable to grasp the horror he had seen, Money Spitgood, the head of the Welcome Committee, stepped forward with an evergreen wreath and said, "On behalf of Seattle and the citizens, welcome." Now you may be thinking, why didn't anyone alert the police? Surely a person acting this far out of society's normal constraints would have to face the consequences. But nobody called the police because the man that stood there and glowered, the Big Finish, was Seattle's newest police officer. He was the consequences. "Curse it," the Big Finish growled as he walked off, which some thought was his name, but is actually the Finnish word for "you will suffer." It's a reminder to all of us that it is truly amazing what some languages can say in one single word. Stepping back in time for the moment, the people of Seattle did not anticipate suffering when they received a letter from the town of Multila, Finland. The letter claimed that Multila had the lowest crime statistics in all of Scandinavia, and because of the good that is found in the heart of every Finnish person, they were offering to send one of their own police officers to Seattle. Now, crime wasn't the worst problem that 1882 Seattle had, but it was high up there on the blackboard list labeled worst problems. By the way, if you were wondering what the worst problem in Seattle was, that would be the unceasing rain. Quick aside here, it rained every darn that sock grandma day from 1879 to 1890 in Seattle, without pause. That might seem impossible to you, but ask any weather person you know, and they will nod vigorously. Getting back to 1881 Seattle, crime was bad because it was so dispiriting. In a place known as the City of Low Spirits, that wasn't helpful to people just trying to maintain, just trying to get up in the morning. As for the crimes themselves, there were stabbings, horrible degradations of humanity, grift, loitering, but typically Seattle crimes involved the stealing of dry socks, or the fencing of dry socks, or lying to people about there being dry socks. So Seattle accepted this offer from Multila, and then they forgot about it. Because any messages sent in the 1880s were like putting a message in a bottle, and then breaking that bottle with a hammer, and then throwing the whole business into a fire. You simply did not expect to hear from anyone ever again. When they got a letter back saying there was a man, saying the man that there was a police officer on the way, they thought it was a miracle. Later, this would force them to redefine miracles. They called him the Big Finish, but you'll find his name in the city archives. Ask Don. Make sure you get down there before December because Don is retiring and he has no idea who's going to take over the archives or even if anyone's going to do it. They might just box it all up. Don doesn't care. He's retiring. Anyway, if Don is on one of his hour-long smoke breaks, you can ask him to pull out the box that says Seattle Police Department, 1880 to 1890. In there, you'll find one old sheet of paper with a list of police officers. You've got your Irish cops, your O'Haras, your Murphys. You have one Earp. Before you think of Wyatt and his kin, note this one was spelled URP. But if you scan down the list, you found the name Lochanan Lurko, and his name is the one important to this story. Now, why the big finish? Lochanan Lurko attacked the welcoming party. It was suggested that maybe his ill humor on arrival was due to a difficult ocean journey, or perhaps a thorn in his massive loaf of a hand. But nobody really knew, because as they learned the next day, Lurko only used one English word: move. After he shoved the police officer out of his way on his first day, Lurko stalked the streets of Seattle. Many people froze when they heard him yelling, because they weren't sure if he was directing his yelling at them. Of course he was. And for the people who did not get out of the way, no matter if they had a kindly smile on their face, or how high their voice was when they said, "Well, hello there," he would strike them down without remorse. People said it was like being hit with a bag of flour tied to a shovel. 25 citizens were knocked unconscious on Lurko's first day. It was a record that would stand until a wagon of 27 unfortunate Hungarian orphans broke down in his path. Move. There are people whose veneer does not match the carpet. Behind an angry facade, they might have a heart of soft gold. Under Lurko's anger was condensed mean that had been reduced like a stock. Where did this fountain of anger come from? Nobody knew, because he didn't arrive with a backstory or a sidekick to tell of his exploits. And the only correspondence they ever received from Attila, Finland again contained only 2 words: no takebacks. Did anybody stand up to him? You could pick the biggest, strongest person in Seattle, and whoever you picked, they would, quietly, over a beer in a dark bar, tell you about the time that Lurko beat them so badly that they cried out of their nose. There was one fisherman with a temper, Olaf Nielsen, who did something. After Lurko knocked him into a pile of rotting sockeye, Nielsen jumped up and hit the big finish with an oar. It was only when Lurko turned and smiled that Nielsen would have understood the fate he just sealed. Despite that, Nielsen still ran, all the way home to his small fisherman's shack near Turtleberg, where he barred the door and perhaps prayed to his Swedish god. When Lurko arrived, he picked up Nielsen's entire home and shook it. At first there was screaming, but after a time, the only sound coming out of the shed was a dull thud, swack, thud. When Lurko finally tossed the shack into Puget Sound, it sank with barely a burble. Maybe Nielsen got out. Perhaps he swam underwater and hid behind a pier piling until night when fishermen friends rowed him across the Sound to Bainbridge. Now you might be thinking, if Nielsen got away, then who was that battered skeleton in a fishing shack that they found at the bottom of Puget Sound last year? And I would ask you to stop interrupting me, because that's not rude. The people of Seattle learned to live with the suffering, the shoving and the yelling of move. The 3 years the Big Finish stomped up and down the streets of Seattle, and for 3 years the Big Finish stomped up and down the streets of Seattle every day until he crossed paths with Harriet Matters. It was Harriet Matters' first time in Seattle. She was standing by her wagon when Lurko turned down the street. Move, the Big Finish roared. But she didn't, because Harriet Matters was having a very bad week. A doorknob maker in Olympia, Matters' string of bad luck started on Monday when she bought a bad batch of rum-ditched churls from a supplier who refused to replace the faulty churls or their tart vessels. Because of that, during production on Tuesday, during the doming and shafting process that is so crucial to the doorknob manufacturing, several rooster flanges were mangled. On Wednesday, when Harriet Matters was finally loading her shipment onto the wagon, one of the crates broke open, scattering doorknobs in the street right before a circus parade. If that wasn't bad enough, on Thursday, the wagon driver she hired to take her to Seattle jumped wagon in Chehalis. On Friday, she had to shoot a lame mule in the head when the other mules looked on and judged her. Then she had to chase that mule down and shoot him twice more because the first bullet didn't take. On Saturday, She was a black woman in Seattle in 1881. Which buttered a Sunday. When a person as big as a potting shed angrily shouted, "Move!" What she said barely came out as a whisper. No. She wouldn't because she couldn't. She hadn't slept in days. She had chased three mules for miles after shooting their friend, and now she was just standing there in the pouring rain. Harriet Matters had nothing left. She was out of money, patience, everything. As it was, standing there, being yelled at, was draining the last bit of energy out of her. Move! Lurko shouted so loudly that 50 miles away, 2 people in Port Townsend did. No. Normally, Lurko would have beaten Harriet Matters so badly that people would know that justice was a false construct created solely to appease the masses. But maybe, since Harriet Matters was the first person to say no to him, he wanted to make a point. And maybe he wanted to make that point with his brand new gun. Let me tell you a little about this gun, because I've gone to see it at the Museum of History and Industry. I mean, it's not on display. You have to make an appointment. And then they give you a pair of white cotton gloves, which you do not have to pay for, and they let you touch the gun. And let me tell you, I am not a firearms expert, but Lurko's gun was ridiculous. It looked like something an apprentice plumber who was not fit to be an apprentice plumber would weld together. Made to fit Lurko's ham of a hand. I guess the idea was that since his giant fingers were too big to fit in a trigger guard, they'd just take one off. Also, I'll tell you, if you drop and break any artifact at a museum, they will ask you to leave and never come back. As you reached for that ridiculous gun, a cruel smile came to Lurko's face. And he tapped that gun on Harriet Matters' forehead. He put his head next to hers, his eyes like a whale's contemplating a minnow, and whispered, "Move." Everyone saw Harriet Matters' brain matter splattered across the faces of bystanders and children and dogs. They regretted the weeks that it would take to clean up this woman's gray matter and the fact that they would be finding fragments of her skull for years to come. Or that's what they foresaw happening. In reality, Matters remained standing while Lurko's smile curled up at the edges as he tightened his grip on the gun. In the moment after the bullet came exploding out of the barrel, all the witnesses understood that Lurko had probably never used a gun before. Having recently killed a mule with 3 shots, Harriet Matters certainly knew it. It's the only explanation for why he had been playing with the trigger when the gun was pointing in the direction it was, up. And so when that bullet and its burning hot trail of gases emerged, they shot out the left part of his nose, obliterated the skin between his eyebrows, dug a half trench in his forehead, and knocked his stupid square fur hat flying into the air. Now, for a person who had just shot off their nostril, Lurko was very lucky. But you wouldn't be able to tell him this, because Lurko howled so loudly that a window broke. He looked down at the recently used gun in his hand and threw it away from him, like it was accursed by a Danish witch. And maybe it was, because as the gun caromed off a trough, it shot him again, this time in the gut. At this moment, with a gunshot injury to the face and gut, he was still incredibly lucky. It was far from the heart, as they say, but again, you couldn't tell him that. Maybe the big finish had never experienced pain. Maybe he'd never been scared. Whatever the reason, Lurko shouted, "Move!" and started to run. Looking wildly over his shoulders, he ran away from the smoking gun, from Harriet Matters, from any semblance of dignity. For such a large man, he ran fast. Of course, no man can run faster than the speed of wood, so he immediately collided with the side of a brewery. Then a barrel jostled by the collision, fell over and rolled and rolled and rolled at a second-floor window and onto Lurko's head. You might think that a barrel in a brewery would be filled with beer, and that is a great guess. But this one was filled with nails. At this point, who knows what the big finish was thinking? Maybe he was afraid of the dark. Maybe small barrel-sized spaces scared him. Maybe he was nail-phobic. Who knows? Despite being covered in a barrel, he began to run again. They say that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place, but the same is not true for running into buildings, because the big finish ran across the street and directly into the porch pole of the Skoogums household. I knew that would happen, Natalie Sugums whispered to her sister. The barrel of nails shattered on Lurko at the same time as the Skoogums precariously placed kerosene lantern fell on his head. I think we're running low on time, so I'll try to be brief. Was there explosion? Yes. Poorly vented outhouses and people on fire are like oil and water. If you replace oil with highly flammable gas and water with fire. Was he hit by lightning? Yes, twice. Defenestration? Yes. Refenestration? Also yes. Did he suffer any sort of injury to the crotch area? No. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. He ran into a hitching post while he was being chased by wasp. Were there any children unfortunate enough to see this horror unfolding? Yes. A wagon load of Hungarian orphans, many of whom had been knocked out by Lurko the day before, cheered wildly during it. All of this ended when the Big Finish finally collided with a large pier column. As he slowly squealed down that piling, his stupid, square fur hat dropped to the ground in front of Harriet Matters. That's how quickly it all happened. While the idea of thanking Harriet Matters for ridding them of their Finnish menace certainly flitted through some people's heads, she was left alone. She quietly finalized her doorknob sale and left Seattle forever. It was like David and Goliath, if Goliath had shot himself and nobody was comfortable with David because he was black. As he sank below the lapping waters of Puget Sound, the people of Seattle discovered that the Big Finish knew more than one word of English. "Avenge me!" he yelled as he sunk below the lapping waters of the Puget Sound. "Avenge me!" Lurko shouted as he stood up in the chest-deep water. "Avenge me!" he yelled as he climbed up the ladder from the water and past Harriet Matters. "Avenge me!" he cried as he sat in a barrel and tried to pull off his heavy, wet sweater. "Avenge me!" he shouted through the thick, wet wool of the sweater that was stuck over his head as he left Seattle and headed back to Multilla on the back of the wagon. "Avenge me!" he would write in his Christmas letter for years to come. For all the bells and whistles and bluster and shoving and shouting and bleeding and beatings and explosions and everything else, in the end, all there was left of the Big Finish was words. One word after another, until there were just two left. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave Johnston, and also Eric Greenwald, Christian Storm, Mortimur K. This has been the Barroom Writers Offensive tonight. It has been done and done, and who knows where we'll go from here, but right now, that's that. So, yeah, well, thanks for coming. And Dan, and Barca Lounge, Phil Petroselli for helping us do this. Thank you.
Where did he go?